When a regional party releases a manifesto, it is typically read as local rhetoric. However, these documents frequently function as blueprints for structural statecraft. We are examining a document titled the 2026 Governance Action Plan. For this analysis, we are bypassing the political posturing. We are going to read this text strictly as an engineering schematic for a new constitutional framework. Deconstructing this proposal reveals the mechanical friction points between the central government and the individual states. By mapping exactly what this document proposes to dismantle, we get a high-contrast X-ray of the stress fractures in India's current constitutional design. Its core philosophy is explicitly defined: cooperative federalism at the union, autonomy at the state. India's current constitutional reality relies on a top-heavy distribution of power, where legislative authority and tax revenues flow heavily from the central government downward to the states. To understand the alternative, we build its three-tier architecture from the ground up. Level 1 is the electorate. Level 2 is the state. Level 3 is the union. We will map the flow of power across these tiers exactly as the text specifies. If enacted, this model systematically strips assumed executive and legislative powers from the central government and anchors them firmly at the base. We begin at Level 1, the individual voter and the physical mechanics of the ballot. The document demands the complete dismantling of India's current electronic voting infrastructure. It replaces this hardware with a deliberate technological regression to physical paper ballots. This new analog ballot requires dual verification. A voter must place their fingerprint or signature on both the ballot stub and the ballot itself, and they are issued a physical receipt confirming their specific vote. The proposal then shifts from the tool to the act itself. Voting is reclassified from a civic right into a legally mandatory civic duty. The strict quantitative goal of this mandate is 100% voter turnout, 0 abstentions. By forcing analog, verifiable participation from every citizen, these base-level mechanics attempt to mathematically eliminate the unrepresented margins of the electorate. The document then addresses the physical structure of the constituencies to solve historical underrepresentation, starting with female voters. It outlines a demand to guarantee 50% women's representation across all legislative bodies. The mechanism proposed to achieve this is carving out exclusive female-only constituencies for both state assembly and national parliamentary elections. This strategy legally prevents male candidates from appearing on the ballot in half of all physical districts, bypassing the candidate selection process normally controlled by political parties. Electoral geography is re-engineered. Fixed demographics dictate the ballot, rather than allowing political parties to dictate the demographics. Moving up to Level 2, the state. Here, the primary target for autonomy is the 7th schedule of the Constitution, which defines exactly who is allowed to make laws. This diagram illustrates the current constitutional distribution of legislative power. There is a block of 97 subjects controlled exclusively by the Union. 66 are controlled by the state. 47 subjects are concurrent, meaning both tiers can legislate, but central law prevails in a conflict. The source text diagnoses this split as an inherent centralization of power that heavily favors New Delhi. The proposed pivot moves almost all legislative authority directly into the state list. Under this framework, the central government retains only 3 domains: defense, currency, and foreign affairs. This structural shift triggers specific, massive infrastructural transfers, such as placing the entire railway administration under state control. From legislative power, the document moves to fiscal power and tax reform. It demands a strict revenue split. The state retains 75% of generated revenue, including GST, customs, and excise, and remits only 25% to the union. By controlling the laws and retaining 3/4 of the localized wealth, the model transforms the state from a subordinate administrator into a nearly sovereign economic engine. This autonomous state requires a localized system to handle federal legal disputes. The structural demand here is the physical decentralization of the highest court in the land, establishing a permanent Supreme Court branch in Chennai. This comes with a strict linguistic reform, mandating Tamil as the official language from the lowest local courts all the way up to the high court level. The text further requires the explicit appointment of native judges. It argues that accurate jurisprudence requires a deep understanding of local cultural and linguistic context. This effectively ring-fences the state's legal system. It ensures that even federal laws must be interpreted through a strictly localized cultural lens. Ascending to the final level 3, the Union, the document outlines what it views as a representation paradox. At independence, the baseline population of India was roughly 30 crore, or 300 million people. Today, that national population has massively exploded upward to 148 crore, nearly 1.5 billion people. This diagram illustrates the mathematical tension. Despite a 400% population growth, national parliamentary seats have remained frozen at 543. The proposed geometric formula to fix this mandates exactly one member of parliament constituency for every 3 state assembly constituencies. The text then attacks indirect representation, criticizing the Rajya Sabha, the upper house of parliament, as an illegitimate backdoor for defeated politicians to retain power. The final move to eradicate indirect power is a demand to make the Indian presidency a directly elected position by the public. These reforms ensure that the union tier is mathematically and directly tethered to the exact population of the base. Reviewing the fully constructed model based on the text specifications, we see an incredibly bottom-heavy republic. The connections between the state and the union peak are restricted to a few thin lines: defense, currency, foreign affairs, and a 25% tax remittance. This is the core triad of the proposed reform: exact demographic representation, absolute fiscal autonomy, and localized linguistic primacy. While this specific blueprint may be politically improbable right now, the architecture is logically consistent within its own radical framework. The true value of analyzing this manifesto isn't as a guaranteed prophecy of the future, but as a high-level diagnostic tool for the present. Documents like this act as a high-contrast X-ray of the current Indian constitutional design. This exercise precisely identifies the administrative, financial, and legal stress points currently straining the relationship between the center and the states. As India's population continues to scale, the pressure on these exact constitutional friction points will increase, making regional demands for restructuring impossible to ignore.